Thank you for everything. I gave my husband a respectful nod, handed him the divorce papers, and left the house. He always put work first and couldn't handle household chores. Without me, he'd surely struggle. Let him realize just how helpless he is. My name is Susan. I quit my job right after we got married and became a homemaker. My husband Robert was my former boss, known for his exceptional work skills. Ever since I started working under Robert, he was always there to help. He often gave me advice about work, and eventually we started going out for dinners, privately. We began dating secretly at work and announced our relationship when we decided to get married. When I shared the news of our marriage, many female colleagues were envious. Becoming a homemaker was Robert's idea. However, once we started our married life, Robert began to look down on me. "You just laze around at home and still get to eat. You're really lucky. Who do you think provides for this lifestyle? You should be grateful to me." If I tried to go out on a weekday, he'd make a displeased face. "Going out for lunch while I'm working? Who do you think earns the money for that lunch? Think about it." I started to feel reluctant to go out, fearing Robert's reaction, and began to stay home more. Is this my life now? Just waiting for Robert to come home? I can't stand this. I felt like I needed a change. Determined, I decided to work outside again. But Robert wouldn't allow me to work part-time. "You want to work? Is my salary not enough for you?" "That's not it." I tried to explain desperately. "I feel suffocated staying at home all the time." "You think of work as just a breather? Are you taking it lightly?" He bombarded me with accusations, but I knew if I backed down, nothing would change. I pleaded with Robert. After much persuasion, he finally agreed to let me work part-time, on the condition that I wouldn't neglect household chores. Working outside after a long time was nerve-wracking, but it felt refreshing. I worked hard to ensure Robert had no complaints about the housework after my part-time job. It was tough initially, but I gradually found my rhythm. Around that time, Robert's mother passed away. I informed my part-time job about the sad news and asked for some time off, which they kindly granted. I went back and forth between Robert's family home and our house, preparing for the funeral and taking care of my father-in-law. After the funeral, Robert told me, "You only need to visit my family home every other day. Daily cleaning and laundry aren't necessary, right? Just prepare meals that my dad can easily heat up." It seemed he was concerned that his needs would be neglected if I visited his family home daily. If I continued to care for father-in-law, I wouldn't be able to keep my part-time job. When I expressed this to Robert, he responded with annoyance. "It doesn't matter if 1 or 2 employees are absent, right? Just reduce your working days. If they complain, just quit. It's not like you're earning much. It's just a breather for you." Reluctantly, I reduced my working days, but I felt guilty for constantly asking for flexibility. I wish father-in-law could take care of himself, but father-in-law was adamant. Household chores are a woman's job. He wouldn't do any cleaning or laundry. He was also picky about food. "This is too salty." Or, "I want something else," were common complaints. Because of this, I often returned home late from his place. One such day, father-in-law didn't want to eat the pot roast 2 days in a row. I had to prepare another meal, which made me late. "You're late! What were you doing? Where's my dinner?" Robert, already home, shouted angrily. "I'm sorry, father-in-law wanted something different, so I had to make another meal. I'll serve dinner right away." I served Robert the pot roast I brought back. "What's this? You promised to take care of the house as usual, right? If this happens again, you'll have to quit your part-time job." "Wait a minute. I was late because I went to your family home, not because of my part-time job." "Enough! You're stretched thin because of that part-time job. Don't ever make me wait again after I come home from work." I knew arguing wouldn't change his mind, but I couldn't accept it. I continued to juggle household chores, caring for father-in-law, and my part-time job, sacrificing sleep. Then one day, I received an unexpected call from my mom. "Susan, Your dad's been diagnosed with a severe illness and needs to be hospitalized. I learned that Dad's cancer was advanced and beyond treatment. I wanted to visit him immediately, but Robert was unsympathetic. Visiting him won't change anything. Focus on our home. Reluctantly, I took early leaves from my part-time job to visit Dad. Half a year later, Dad passed away. While helping my devastated mom with funeral preparations, I informed Robert about the funeral date. His response was intimidating. "You'll be back before I return from work, right? I don't want to wait for dinner again." "You're attending the funeral too, right?" "Why would I? It's a weekday and I have work." "My dad just passed away. Can't you take paid leave?" "In theory, yes, but I have important meetings. It's not that simple. It should be a priority to bid farewell to a family member. When your mom passed, I took several days off. I'm still adjusting my work schedule for you." Robert scoffed. "Don't compare your part-time job to mine. I have responsibilities you wouldn't understand. I can't just take time off." After more pleading, he reluctantly agreed. "Fine, I'll take a few hours off for the funeral." Saying so, Robert forcibly ended the conversation. With the funeral preparations, I visited my family home more often, took more days off from work, and reduced my visits to father-in-law to every third day. Consequently, I could only manage household chores every third day. Robert grew more irritable. "You've been slacking off with the chores. You haven't cleaned in 2 days." "Because..." I desperately excused myself to him. "I was helping Mom all day 2 days ago, and visited father-in-law yesterday." "Excuses again? Your mom has been managing the house for years. Why does she need so much help now?" "After Dad's passing, she's too devastated to do anything. I want to be there for her." Robert dismissed her grief. "She's just being weak. Your dad's illness wasn't sudden. She should have been prepared. This is why I say women." "How can you say that? Even if she knew losing a lifelong partner is devastating. Can't you understand her feelings?" "I'm saying she should face reality. Your dad should have planned better. Leaving without preparing his wife is irresponsible." "How can you speak of my family like that? Don't you have any respect for them?" "What's there to respect? Just because they're older? That's naive thinking." Watching my silent anger, Robert sneered and said, "Why should anyone respect your family? Just because they're older? That's naive thinking, isn't it?" "How can you say that? Not just about my mom, but also about my dad, who passed away after a long illness." That was the moment I decided to cut ties with Robert. I can't talk to him anymore. Just being in the same room with him makes my skin crawl. I began to secretly prepare to leave the house, using the funeral preparations as a cover. I discreetly moved my belongings to my parents' home. It was hard to tell my grieving mom about the current situation, but I couldn't bear it any longer. I couldn't stand Robert's attitude, and I wanted to move back home. When I told my mom, she comforted me, saying, "You've done well so far. If Susan wants to come back, I'd be more than happy. It won't be lonely here with you." "Thank you, Mom." It's better to free yourself from Robert and find new happiness than to force a marriage. With those words from my mom, I felt reassured and continued my preparations to leave. I kept my emotions in check, flawlessly handling household chores and taking care of my father-in-law. It's just a little longer of enduring doing things for my husband. As long as I did the housework, Robert didn't complain, and we avoided unnecessary conversations. On the day of the funeral, after briefly paying his respects, Robert returned to work without much of a goodbye. "Robert, you're really going back to work, huh?" My mom looked disappointed. Even though she knew about our situation, she had hoped he would take a break from work during this time. Apparently, that's what Mom was expecting. "Did you see, Mom? That's just how he is." Hearing my indifferent comment, my mom replied, "Well, I guess there's nothing we can do." We both felt reassured that our decision to divorce was the right one. After the funeral, as usual, Robert returned from work. "I'm back." Welcome home, Robert shouted at my curt response. Welcome home? That's it? I took time off work for the funeral because of you. You should thank me. Thank you? Yes, your family interfered with my work. Now say it. Robert sat arrogantly on the sofa, waiting for my response. I bowed slightly to him and said, Thank you for everything so far. What did you just say? So far? What do you mean? I quickly handed Robert the divorce papers. What? Divorce papers? What's this about? It means exactly what it says. I want a divorce. Robert burst into laughter. Ha ha ha! You think you can live without my money? If you have time for jokes, make dinner. I'm serious. I'm leaving to live with my mom. She's okay with it. I've saved some money from my part-time job, and they're considering offering me a full-time position. What? A full-time job? For someone as inefficient as you? Goodbye. I handed the stunned Robert the divorce papers and left with just one bag. When I arrived at my parents' house, I fell asleep talking about my hardships and memories of my dad with my mom. Robert kept contacting me, but I ignored all his messages. His messages were still condescending. How can a wife leave her husband like that? Apologize and come back, and I'll forgive you this time. Ignoring him was the right choice. Robert never came to my parents' house. His pride wouldn't allow it. Thanks to that, my mom and I lived peacefully. A few days later, I realized I left something at the house and sneaked back while Robert was at work. The house was a mess. Garbage and dust were everywhere, with fast food wrappers scattered in the kitchen and wrinkled clothes all over the floor. It seemed Robert hadn't done any housework. I wonder how his dad is doing. As I wandered near Robert's family home, I saw his dad and a caretaker talking at the entrance. Apparently, there were complaints from neighbors about a foul smell from the trash-filled room. If things don't improve, you need to leave immediately. I understand. I'll go to my son's place. That's what father-in-law told caretaker. His son's place? If his dad goes there, it'll just add another man who can't do housework, and the trash will pile up even more. Afterwards, I heard from neighbors that Robert's father had packed his bags and tried to move in with Robert. But Robert refused to live with him, leading to a big argument. Their dispute about living arrangements became the talk of the neighborhood, and eventually Robert had to compromise. Even though they ended up living together, predictably, Robert's house turned into a trash heap, causing a stench that bothered the neighbors. Robert, now going to work in wrinkled and dirty shirts, was quickly losing respect from those around him. There were even talks of him being demoted, and he came to apologize at my parents' house. Susan! I was wrong. Robert? Just when I thought he finally understood, he said condescendingly, Are you satisfied now? I apologized. Now fix your attitude and come back. Robert hadn't changed at all. What exactly did you reflect on? What? Why are you acting so high and mighty? You didn't just give a shallow apology, did you? Faced with my calm tone, Robert was speechless. Please go home. I have no intention of returning to that house. But without you, the house is a mess, and there's my dad to take care of. You just want me back to take care of you and your dad, right? Well, you might think you're competent at work, but if you can't manage your own life, you're worse than a child. What? How dare you talk to your husband like that? Not husband, ex-husband. We're getting a divorce, so we're strangers now. Wait, I don't want a divorce. Shut up. I am not your servant. You always look down on homemakers. Men like you, stuck in the past and domineering, should just be buried in your trash-filled houses. Stay away from me, you arrogant jerk. I shouted at Robert, locked the door behind him, and when I turned around, my mom was clapping, saying, Well said. After that, I started the divorce mediation process. Fortunately, the offer for a full-time position progressed smoothly, and it seemed I could earn enough to live comfortably with my mom. My mom, who had been down after losing my dad, was gradually regaining her spirit now that I was back. Life with just the two of us is now fulfilling and joyful. According to my lawyer, Robert and his dad are still living in their trash-filled house. Known in the neighborhood as the useless father-son duo, they're the subject of gossip. Robert, unable to sleep properly because of the trash, is always sleep-deprived. As a result, he lost focus, made a significant mistake at work, and was forced to resign. Without the means to hire a housekeeper, their future looks bleak. Looking back, I feel foolish for trying so hard to please Robert. I'm grateful to have escaped a life of constant endurance. From now on, I'll live my life to the fullest.